What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. I'm Pony Lawson, and I'm here to talk about your tattoos. Collectors, you're up. Let's find out what you sent in and break them down. The first one sent in is from Jimmie LeFlore, and Jimmie, you sent in this little hot dog riding a skateboard. Now this may not be the best quality tattoo, but it is a fun one. And nothing quite says fun like a weenie on wheels. Let me see that weenie do a kickflip. I really like this design, it just makes me smile. Now compared to the skateboard, that is one giant
Dick!
Yeah.
Take a look out of starboard. Oh my God.
But I guess you'd rather have that than a little smoky. As far as technical application goes, it could use a little sprucing up. The one thing I'm not a huge fan of is that black shading in the weenie itself. I would have liked to seen some darker reds faded up to a lighter red just to give it some nice curvature. But I mean, who doesn't like a little curve? The black shading here just makes it look like a dirty little wiener. Or like it's been sitting in the fridge for a bit too long. To be honest, I'm really not a fan of any of the gray shading you have here, in the hands and in the feet especially. I think those two elements could have been stark white and it would have just made this thing pop even more. Now here in Chicago, we like to have our hot dogs with a little bit of poppy seeds on the bun, and I think it would have been nice to see some of that detail in a tattoo like this. And even if you didn't want to add seeds, some other kind of shading in that bun would have just helped it look a lot less flat. I do notice that the top of this tattoo is covering an older existing tattoo, and I'm not sure why the artist didn't move it down just an inch or two to help clean up that area, because I think the only reason that the bill of that hat has any shading is to cover up that older tattoo. Again, it would have just gave this tattoo an overall cleaner appearance. The line work could definitely use some sprucing up. I see some areas that are a lot thinner than others. If we look at the top of the bun, the left side of the bun is very thin, and the right side of the bun is very thick and jagged. Now that's nothing that another artist couldn't go in and fix up later. And maybe even add some extra colors in there too, again, just to give it some nice shape. But again, I do think this is a very fun design. I just think this wiener needs a little bit of loving. But thank you so much, Jimmie, for sending it in and allowing me to take a peek. All right, the next one sent in is from collector Jesse Yuri. And Jesse, you sent in this tattoo of Wolverine versus the Hulk. I know those two characters. Now right off the bat, I think this tattoo is badass. It has all the right values that an extremely well done tattoo needs. The contrast here is great. You've got these very dark blacks juxtaposing with these stark white highlights. And it just comes together so well. And speaking of whites, I do think that the artist put them in all the right spots. And it's not overdone. There is a lot of white here, but again, they are in the spots where they need to be. And I do think it's cool that we get to see the Hulk's reflection in Wolverine's butter knives. That is what he uses, right? If I had to be nitpicky, that's just the one part that I'm not a huge fan of. They just don't look like Wolverine's claws. They don't quite come to a sharp point, and they look a little blunt, if I'm being blunt. But the texture in this tattoo is just so good. In the head, in the beard, it doesn't really look like the artist slacked anywhere, except for that galaxy in the background. But one thing that makes realistic tattoos shine is the ability to control light and shadow, and the artist did an exceptional job with just that. I do wish the artist ended the tattoo at Wolverine's head rather than pushing those background shades up into the knee. I think it would have given you more room to add other tattoos later, and since Wolverine already has a hard edge on top of his head, you don't really need it. And just like the top, I think the artist did something similar with the bottom. The hand kind of just gets lost in that shading, since there really is no negative space or any kind of lighter shading to show that edge of the hand. So I do think those two areas of the tattoo would look a lot cleaner if the artist just left those out altogether. But you did send in a healed photo, so let's take a look at that. Now I think this thing healed extremely well. It looks like all the little shades and details have stayed. Even all the whites seem to hang around even after living with it for a year. If I were a fan of Wolverine, I would be very pumped to wear this tattoo, even with that mashed potato topping. So Jesse, I do think you found a good artist, and I would stick with him. There are just a few of those things that I had to nitpick, but that's what I do. But thank you so much for sending that in and allowing me to take a look. The next tattoo sent in is from Damien. And Damien, you sent a wolf wrapped around a sword. You said this is about a month old and you're going in at the 3-month mark for a touch-up. Well, I do hope the artist touches up the entire thing, because it needs it. The lines are just kind of all over the place. It doesn't look like a skilled tattooer worked on this piece. A lot of these things are things that should have been worked out in their apprenticeship, because there's no way that I would let a full-time artist put out work like this out of my shop. Don't get me wrong, we have definitely seen worse on this channel, but this looks like it should be critiqued on one of our apprentice episodes. The lines in this tattoo are just not consistent by any stretch. If you look at the lines on the handle on the right, they're very thick and blown out. And if you look at the lines on the left of the handle, they're very thin and falling out. My problem with you going back to this same artist to finish this tattoo is they're just gonna add more shitty lines. When it comes to the mouth of the wolf, that thing is gnarly. It looks like it's got one bottom tooth and a bunch of little stragglers just barely hanging on. A wolf should probably see a dentist. And if I'm being honest, the lips around the wolf kind of look like they belong on Hatchet Face from the movie Crybaby.
Sometimes shook up old ladies get cut.
Now when we look at the shading of this tattoo, it is all one tone. There really is no variety to show any kind of depth in this tattoo, and the shading in those scales really isn't helping at all. They kind of just look like they've been thrown in there. You need to add different tones of black or gray wash to show some good shape. Make it look like these scales are sitting on top of one another, because this just kind of looks like corn on the cob. And trust me, growing up in Indiana, I know corn.
Proving once again there is more than corn in Indiana.
So Damien, I know this is going to be hard to hear, but I would try to find an artist that can help you out with this tattoo. It is salvageable after all. Sometimes it's worth spending a few extra dollars for something that you're going to be happy with for the rest of your life. But thank you so much for sending that in, and good luck. Real quick, I want to take a break and give a shout out to the sponsor of my channel, Mad Rabbit. Mad Rabbit is a tattoo aftercare company that really has something for everyone. And if you head on over to madrabbit.com and use code PONY20, you can save 20% off of your entire order. All right, let's get back to the show. All right, the next one sent in is from Ryan. And Ryan, you sent in a, what the f is this? Crikey, people. You say you're going to get this touched up once it heals. I don't know what they plan on touching up. If they can't execute a tattoo well the first go around, I don't think I would be going back to get something touched up because it's not going to get any better. I don't think they're gonna touch up all those solid blacks. I mean, maybe if they fall out, but it's just going to end up looking like this again. Jesus Christ, dude. All right, let's figure this out. I can tell it's a casket with some roses on top with a little skull in there. But this has got to be one of the messier tattoos I've seen. I honestly couldn't tell what this was for a solid 10 seconds. I can't not see a bleeding butthole in the middle of that top part of the casket. The black shading that's going on in the red part of the casket does not work well, and it just looks like it's been thrown in there. I'm gonna tell you the same thing that I told the last tattoo, and maybe don't go back to this artist for a touch-up. Maybe find somebody that knows what they're doing. And I'm sorry to the artist if you see this, but you should be sorry. You've got to stop telling people that a touch-up is going to fix everything, because it's not. I mean, maybe the artist had a bad day. We all have our bad days, but there's really just no good techniques here either. Like the stipples are bad, the lines are bad, everything is bad. It cracks me up that people are very happy with their shitty tattoos. I mean, if it makes you happy, more power to you. Do you like it just because it's on your arm? Are you making yourself like this tattoo because it's on your body? I know I'm being mean today, but damn it, y'all need help. Ryan, if you saw this tattoo on somebody else, what would you think of it? So I'm not sure if this is a reference from something. Maybe the reference was just as bad and this looks exactly like the reference. That doesn't make it good. Unlike the last tattoo, this one is definitely going to be a lot harder to save. If somebody came into my shop with this wanting it to be touched up, I don't know what I would do to help, because that is a lot of black. I can't stop seeing a bloody butthole. Ryan, I wish I could be more helpful with this piece. If you do decide to go back to this tattooer for a touch-up, I would love for you to send it over and prove me wrong, because I just don't see how this one could get any better. But I do appreciate you putting yourself out there and sending this in. I wish you the best. All right, the next one sent in is from Courtney K, and Courtney, you sent in this lucky cat tattoo. You did mention that this is the artist's original design, which is always great to see, and this tattoo isn't bad at all. I think it could use a little bit of saturation work, but as far as everything else goes, I think this thing is pretty well put together. I do think that the tattoo itself does represent the original design, but as I said, I do think the saturation could use just a little bit of work. I do see some holidays here and there, like up in the red area and even some in the orange clouds. But that's nothing that an actual touch-up can't fix. I am a huge fan of the gray wash outlines that are separating the skin tone from the orange. I think it'll help those oranges and yellows stay a lot brighter for a lot longer. Now, these gray wash outlines weren't there in the original design. However, I do think it's an excellent thing to add to a tattoo like this. If they weren't there, those oranges would just be a little more bland. But I do see some of those lines are a little bit darker than they should be. Those gray wash lines are almost meant to be felt but not seen. You see a great example of that on the right side. You don't really see many of those gray wash outlines, when you see a lot of them happening on the left-hand side. When we look at a healed tattoo, we see some things that healed really well, and then we also see some things that could use a little bit of color boosting, like those orange clouds. When we look at the right side of the clouds, it looks like they faded away just a bit too much. If the artist were to use some darker oranges or something just to boost that up a bit, I think it would have healed a lot better. And not only that, it would have made those other brighter tones a lot more vibrant. When we look at the top of the tattoo, it does look like the artist went out of the lines just a little bit. I think they could have taken that color and put them in those holidays. But I do think this thing is cute and pretty solid overall. And if you do decide to go get a touch-up, I just think boosting some of that saturation and tightening up some of those holidays would just make this thing that much more solid. But as it sits, I think you should still be pretty happy with this tattoo, Courtney, and thank you so much for sending that in. All right, so each week I like to give props to the person who I think submitted the best work of the episode. And the tattoo that I think excelled above the rest this week was Jesse Yuri with this Hulk versus Wolverine tattoo. While I do believe there were some strange things happening with those butter knife claws and background shades, I definitely cannot overlook the attention to detail and understanding of light and shadow. And the artist definitely made made sure that those whites were punched in, because even after 1 year, this thing is still glistening. And seeing that healed tattoo, you can definitely tell that the artist took their time and put in a lot of care with their work. So Jesse, you and the artist should definitely be proud of this piece. So once again, congratulations on being my favorite this week. All right, now before we go anywhere, I want to share with you an artist who I think you should all be following, and that artist is MacKenzie out of Salem, Massachusetts. I think Kyle's work is a great example of modern traditional tattooing, with flawless lines, solid saturation, and an excellent understanding of how these tattoos are going to age. Looking through Kyle's work, you can tell he uses a lot of the same color palette, and I think that's a great thing. By having that predetermined color palette, he can focus a lot more on executing a solid tattoo rather than figuring out which colors he's going to use. And this is a great way to develop your style. By using these colors over and over again and knowing how they heal, your tattoos are only going to get better. And you can really tell he knows his way around these colors. So make sure you head on over to his Instagram page, give him a follow, and let him know I sent you. All right, now that's it for the critiques this week. Once again, thank you so much to everyone who submitted their work. And if you'd like to see your tattoos featured here, you can do so by sending them to ponycritiques@gmail.com. Don't forget to subscribe while you're here, and as always, I will see you all next week.